protect your own eyes if you want to. So there they are. So I've got a test strip in here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at testing some brake fluid to see, does it need to be replaced? So what you see is a little card in there and one of these little foil packets. So how many of you have a pool at home or had a pool, hot tub, something like that? So you're checking, you probably wish, but right, we're going to check the condition of the fluid much like we would do a pH test on pool water or something like that, or a fish tank. So what we're actually looking for is copper. And this little card will tell us the amount of copper that is in the brake fluid. And basically, as long as we're clear or very light colored, we're okay. But the darker we get, the higher parts per million count we have, and the more that we see that the brake fluid needs to be changed. So I'll give this back to you guys. I think I actually ended up with 2 in that kit there. So we're going to see first what the condition of the brake fluid is. Now these cars, we're going to primarily work on this one over here on the other side. This is for the afternoon group. So this is, I think, a 99, and I believe that's a 2001, and there's a good chance that the brake fluid's probably never been changed in either one of them. These are ex-highway patrol cars. They went through highway patrol, and then they came to our basic law enforcement training program, and they beat them to death. They had students driving them on the track. And then when they retired them, I said, I'll take those because they're still pretty hard to kill. So, but we're going to use this one today for this group, and we're going to check the brake fluid. So brake fluid is pretty much just like the blood in you. It's an integral part of the brake system. The master cylinder is where the brake fluid pretty much stays, but it's a sealed system. So we're going to create pressure in that master cylinder when we put our foot on the pedal, and it's going to go out to all of the wheels. Now, if you know anything about hydraulics, it doesn't matter how long a line is. A lot of people like, oh, well, if the line is shorter from there to the front wheel, that one's going to lock up first, and that's not the way hydraulics work. You have equal pressure throughout the entire system regardless of the length of the line. So that makes the car stop evenly. If you have unequal pressure, then it doesn't stop evenly, and that's a problem. So we're going to check that fluid and just see what it looks like in the condition of it, because a lot of people will comment, they'll say, I took my car, let's just pick on the Toyota place because they do it a lot. I took my car to the Toyota place and they said, I need to change my brake fluid. I've never heard of having to have my brake fluid changed before. I get that comment a lot. And this is where we're going to see those little test strips and where it kind of will show us that, yes, we do need to replace our brake fluid. Brake fluid is hydroscopic. Anybody know what that means? Hydroscopic. So let's break it down. Hydro is water, scopic, small particles. So hydroscopic basically means our brake fluid is going to absorb water. The water degrades the brake fluid. It can actually dissolve the brake fluid if high enough concentrations. So water in the system creates corrosion and all kinds of havoc on the parts that don't like water. So you always want to use brake fluid from a sealed container because it will just absorb moisture from the atmosphere. So that's the reason we need to flush it periodically. Now I can't give you a good time frame on that. Some people say, oh, every 30,000 miles. Some people say every 50,000 miles. And you're probably sitting there thinking, ooh, I've got double that on the car I drive every day. Because I do, and I have done my own brake. Sorry about that. So I have done my own brake fluid. I just smacked the microphone, so that probably sounds terrible to whoever's listening to us on the live stream. But so if you guys want to take your packet and open the little tab and just come dip it in the fluid, and I think it tells you it gives 30 seconds to a minute for it to react.
How do you get all the brake fluid out?
Good question. So once we get the wheels off, you'll see at each point we'll have 4 calipers. These are the ones that actually squeeze our pads together on our rotor. There's a bleeder valve on there. So I actually have a machine that will connect to all 4 of the bleeder valves. It'll push fluid in the top, it'll pressurize the system and flush it out. So You don't have to have a specific machine. You can do it manually. It just takes longer. So, yep, you got one open?
Keeps the air from getting into the brake line.
Yes, exactly. The machine works much better because it keeps the air out of the system. Air in the system is very bad because air is compressible and brake fluid is not. We can put it under pressure, but we can't change its volume. So that's the reason we get that. Did you get some? Oh, yeah. It actually doesn't look as bad as it. Yeah, come around. Come on around. Now, I see you have a Skills USA hat on, so are you automotive by any chance?
I am not.
Okay.
Dang, I've done about everything except.
That's okay.
I've done carpentry, robotics.
Wow, carpentry and robotics. That sounds great. I'm gonna get out of your way. I believe the card says 30 seconds or so. Yeah.
Hold it in there for 30 seconds.
No, you just give it 30 seconds to react and then compare the color on the chart to see what kind of parts per million. And this is kind of one of those tests that I'm kind of seeing if everybody's test strip gives us the same answer. Yes, ma'am. Just dip it down in the fluid. And then, like I say, just give it 30 seconds or so.
Is this something we should ask for if they tell us our brake fluid? So what does the strip look like?
If they're telling you you need brake fluid changed, they should have some sort of scale to tell you that. But brake fluid by nature is supposed to be a light amber color. So if it's darkened at all, it probably needs to be changed. So
In your experience, as far as the recommended vehicle that it comes with, does it kind of follow close to it?
yeah,
Depending on where you're living at.
driving habits has a huge difference on all of your maintenance schedules. So right. Well, really and truthfully, most people think, the guys that tow and haul stuff or are off-road and things, they're the ones that are the hardest on their vehicles. But really, the people that drive the short distances are the worst on their vehicles than the people that drive them harder and longer. So all of those things kind of play into maintenance schedules. And that's the reason maintenance schedules are kind of vague. So what we got?
We got about the second to the third one.
Okay, so you're in the 30 range or so?
Mine was or maybe somewhere in between.
Okay, yeah, I'd say, but in between the 30 and the 100, and you can see that's considered to be okay. And here we're getting to requires service. So the good thing, I'm pretty sure at some point the brake fluid got changed on these, but it's probably been several years. But these cars have been sitting for several years because we only use them when we don't have an actual vehicle to work on. I use some donated vehicles, and to keep my students motivated, I let them work on their own stuff. Because what better motivation if they tear it apart and they can't leave until they fix it. So, and usually, you all know, their goal is to whatever time that class is supposed to end, that's what they're shooting for. And then I get the rare ones that, I was like, are you going to go home today? Because I'd like to at some point as well. So it's hit and miss. The great thing about college is, and I don't mean this bad when I say it, I tell them we're not high school. We are a little more fluid in how we do things. We don't have an itinerary minute by minute. So, because you can't when you're doing automotive work. Because I don't know what we're going to find today. I intentionally, all I did was bring the vehicles in and put them on the lift so you didn't have to do that. So I don't know how bad the brakes are on this. I don't know if we're going to have any problems getting stuff apart. We might not. So, and that was the reason I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time just talking in the classroom. So everybody was able to check their brake fluid, and I think we were all saying somewhere in the 30 range or a little darker possibly. So that's good. We did a validation, and all of our tests are pretty much about the same. So this fluid, according to our chart, is not necessarily needs to be changed. So you were asking a question, how closely should we follow those recommended charts or the maintenance intervals or whatever. And a lot of it, I was telling him, a lot of it really depends on your driving habits, your driving style. So if you're a short trip person, you only drive 3 or 4 miles to work every day, you're actually going to be in the severe service category because your vehicle never gets up to temperature like it should. You know, you're not driving it that much. You think, oh, well, that's actually better for it. It's not. We really want everything to get up to temperature and burn off any moisture in the oils and things, condensation, stuff like that. So the long trip guys like me, I drive 35 minutes to work every day, you know, which is pretty typical of where we are. You know, you can't live in the city because you don't want to, probably. You have to drive to get to the schools that you're in. So I see Pitt County and I saw Bertie. So all of you guys are, all, you know, you're in our service area. You're all rural. So you understand about driving. There's no riding the bus. So public transportation bus, I guess. So, all right, so we've kind of checked out the fluid. So we're going to just do a visual when we work on anything in the shop. It's always a good idea to just look at what you're doing. I always recommend, I tell my students, you have a cell phone on you, I know, actually take it out and take a picture of something before you get started on it. That way you know what it looks like when you get ready to put it back. Because some people's short-term memory is not what it should be. I've always been pretty good at being able to remember what stuff looked like. I take everything apart, I put it in my pan or my tray, and I know that bolt went to this spot or something. But that's a struggle that we definitely see. Fortunately, we're not going to be messing with a whole lot of bolts today. So, all right, so each cart had a set of brake pads in it and an instruction sheet. I went ahead and found the instructions for you so you wouldn't have to look up that. And it's going to be real basic instructions, but these are manufacturer's instructions for the procedure that we're going to do today. So it may say remove something, and you have to figure out what they mean by remove it. So the brake pads, there's front and rear. So brake pads come in a set like that. So you'll have a set of front and a set of rear. We've obviously got to get it up in the air and get the tire off. I highlighted the top of the instruction sheet so you know which one you're on. So looks like you guys got rear and you guys got front, so you're good where you're at. So I just need y'all to kind of transition on around to whichever cart you got, and we're going to raise the car up and see if we can get started. Okay? Yep, front, great. All right, so I'm going to raise it up. A lot of people are freaked out about lifts. Let's see, we got another rear person. Oh, okay. So are y'all all one group, or you just kind of? Okay. Y'all want to be two? Okay, because I got another car, another wheel. So a lot of people are nervous about getting underneath of a lift because they think, oh, this, what if it falls on me? Don't worry about it. You won't ever know it. I spent 15 years in a Chevrolet dealer or GM dealer, or two different ones actually. I came from community college background. I actually went to Wayne Community College here in Goldsboro, or not here in Goldsboro, but here in North Carolina in Goldsboro. So I kind of have the same training that I do train people. So, but the lift is a great tool, and it's not something to be worried about. They're very stable, and I've only thrown one car off a lift in 30 years of working on stuff. So maybe it won't be number 2 for today. So. Everybody jumps. Well, it's the little things that I enjoy. Those are just the safety locks.
We like safety locks.
Yes. All right. So that looks like I'm gonna let it down on the actual safety lock, so it can't fall unless somebody gets really ambitious and pushes really, really, really hard. So, all right. So the first thing we got to do is get the wheels off. So I've got a toolbox for a left side.
Push really hard.
What's that?
You said they get ambitious and push really hard.
Right. If they pushed it off lift. So it's not going to happen. I was just being funny. So so the first thing we got to do is get the wheel off, and I'm going to let you guys see if you can find a socket. Use a black impact socket. Should be one in the top up here that matches the lug nuts. And I don't have enough for everybody to have their own toolbox because that would get a little bit confusing. But I think we can work left and right. Whatever, they should be the same size front and rear. So if one of you finds it, you should be good. So a little bit bigger. Does anybody want any gloves? All right, so you found it. All right, so now let's find I've got an air impact gun. Should be in the bottom box, a couple of drawers down. And these are locking drawers, so you have to kind of slide over a little bit to open on the bottom. There you go. I will get you some gloves. Actually, I got them right here. I had them out already, so now they're extra large is all I've got.
That's fine.
So
I don't want to get my nails dirty.
I understand. That'll give you a little more room.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, man.
Yep. There should be one in the bottom of the box down there.
No, that's not it.
That's a torque wrench. That's for tightening. We don't use it for breaking stuff loose. And we're going, if you're trying to remove stuff with it, all right, those drawers have a locking feature. Come up one more drawer. Those are the smaller ones. There you go, in the back right corner.
Oh, we're going to do.
We're going to use the air tools.
Okay.
All right, so. Hey, look at there. You already figured it out.
Tell me when.
Go for it.
All right.
Have fun.
I've done this before, and you ladies care.
You got the air hose to come out and stick. That's even better. You're good. I just didn't want to run into you. You can get battery operated ones. I actually have one. So. We can leave that up. There you go. Just squeeze the trigger and.
How you know if we
I always check before I put it up there because if. But that's what I always do. So yeah, there you go. And I have a battery operated one too, but you're still gonna need the socket. So yeah.
Unless you got another one with a socket in it.
Probably don't. What size have you got? Is it a 7, 8? 13, 16. It's okay. Well, you can just keep going with that.
Yeah, you go.
I've got some right up here on this red cart behind the fan.
Pretty good rotors there.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. So one of the things that we can actually see, and I'll walk through, you guys have got the first. This should be a nice, smooth, shiny surface. This pad is actually down to the metal. So your friction material is this stuff right here. So if you look at the spec on it, it tells you, I think, 1 millimeter or something on this particular vehicle. Let's see here.
From the front, yeah.
Yeah, 1 millimeter or about 40 thousandths of an inch. So we're down to the metal part rubbing directly on the rotor. So we definitely need to put pads on this thing. So
You need to weight it.
we should really resurface this rotor, absolutely, because it is actually that way on the front and the back. So, but this is just a demo car, so we're gonna. Yep, sorry, I messed your stuff up. All right, let's see what you guys got over here. And I say guys, that's just.
You're not. I'm not.
You're not
offended.
offending me.
Okay. So these pads really don't look bad. They probably don't even need to be replaced. The front ones are really bad on this one. They're actually.
That one, so
Absolutely, yeah.
that's what I want to.
Yep, you can definitely look. These do have some wear, but not bad. All right, let's see what we got here. There you go. And everything you take off, just drop it in your cart. That way you don't have to worry about where did I put that? Let me get this can out of the way. All right, let's see how the group. I'll walk around and check out my front group here. Oh, you're good. I'm just kind of sliding by, trying to.
Definitely.
That was definitely bad. All right, now this side looks like it's supposed to, but our pad is definitely worn. If you guys want to step over and look at the other side, so what we've got is, let me see one of those brake pads in the cart. So our instructions say if the friction material here, which is the rough part, if it wears down and it's within 1 millimeter of this metal backing plate, we need to be replaced. So we're pretty close here. You can see the difference in between the two. It's not bad, but the other side, it's actually metal on metal. It's actually chewed the rotor surface up.
This how my car would be.
Yeah, and it costs more when you let it get to the rotors and tear up the rotors. 'Cause
Yes.
Then you got to replace those too.
Really and truthfully, that rotor over there needs to be replaced. We're not going to do that because these cars don't go out on the highway. So you can sit that back in there. So, no, you're fine. So if you guys want to take a second after you look at your own and come and look at the right front one, we'll see this one is definitely bad. So this was actually a great vehicle to start with because there's the rotor surface is chewed up where the metal has been rubbing on it. And believe it or not, I've had people bring vehicles in when I was in the dealership and here, and they're say, my brakes feel funny, but I don't hear anything. There's a chance that this wouldn't even make a noise. It just depends on, it may make a scrubbing sound, or you may not even hear it. Depends on, how loud your car is normally or how high you have the radio turned up. So anyway, once we get that point, we're going to take the caliper off. Now we're not going to remove the line from it because we're going to still leave the system sealed while we're doing this. So we shouldn't see brake fluid at any point during the brake pad change. If we do, we've got another problem. So basically, to get this caliper off, you're going to remove this bolt here, and there's one down here that corresponds to it. And then we should be able to kind of pry that thing out of there.
Does the hood fit back in that space?
No, you'll have to get wrenches or a socket, whatever you can find to get in there. That is up to you. I would suggest probably a socket and the right size socket. Now we've got different drive sizes in here, so as you just realized, that's a 1/2-inch drive socket and that's a 3/8 drive ratchet. So go one drawer down and you'll find the rest of your sockets. Keep the ratchet. No, just one more. So all of these. Now, these toolboxes have standard and metric tools in them. So this car being a 99 or a 2001, whichever, this is pretty much everything going to be metric. So make sure you've got the right size tool so you don't mess up a fastener.
What is it? What's the bolt up there?
It's 9/16 foot, but he said it's metric, so we got to get metric.
14 probably.
Do we need to have another tool to hold this tight so it doesn't keep spinning?
It keeps spinning, doesn't it? Yeah. So there are flat spots on this. You can actually use a wrench to slide over that, and it will keep it from spinning. So.
Guess the size for me. Can you guess the size?
Can I guess the size? I would probably go with a 19,
A 19?
maybe. Slide left,
Oh, slap.
and then pull. There you go.
He says try 19.
You're gonna probably want the big open end. instead of the line wrench. And it may be larger than that. We may have to go to a standard size wrench just to hold it. Looks like it's going to be a little larger than that. So that's the biggest one I have in metric. So try the next drawer down. That's standard stuff. So probably something more in the 7/8 range. There's a lot of sizes that are very close in standard and metric. If you did the math on it, it's pretty close.
Next
So
side.
still need one more size up.
Do you want us to change this one or leave it later?
You can go ahead and change it.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to, or if you want to
I
help,
said,
I don't care.
I don't want to mess you up. Like,
I got another car for this afternoon, so
I said, I know there might be bigger groups.
that's possible. But we'll see.
Because we're content kind of watching and
However you want to do it. I'm flexible. If you want to just help them, that's fine.
and then we can put the tire back on.
Yeah. So in reality though, if you change one side, you always change the other. Anything brake related, you change one side, you change the other.
Mess you up by not changing one, and the other one got changed.
Oh, it's fine. They'll get changed eventually anyway. So I got students they'll get in there and tear something up. So all right, I'm gonna walk around the other side. All right, how are we doing over here?
Well, I think this one is the right one, which is, I say 11,
Okay.
but I need a different ratchet though.
Let's see what you got here.
It still doesn't seem like it's gripping. Nope.
Let me get a feel for it for you. No, I think you're going to probably be a 10.
10.
Yep. And you see these have been sitting a little while. They're kind of growing. Spider webs and stuff.
Over here, I know it's off top, but
Which car? That's my car, actually. We did all brand new brakes under the back of it and shocks, and we rebuilt the front suspension. When I was in high school, I had a 74 model just like it, and I was trying to relive some childhood memories, I guess, and bought another one. So I still have my original car, but it's so rusty it wasn't worth fixing. So
yeah.
I had like 3 or 4 different people see the ad on Marketplace and say, "Oh, you look at this. This was just like your car." I was like, "Why would y'all do that to me? Now I've got to go buy another car."
I broke the one at the top. The one at the top is broken.
So I'll buy something and use it as a training aid. What's that now? I did take some parts off of my original car. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. So you're look at the ratchet. It actually says on and off on it. The little lever.
You had it right then.
I think you're pulling down. That should have been right. Excuse me, correct, not right. It should have been correct. All right, let's see what we got.
So pry it this way.
All right, you got both of them
No
off.
prying.
No, prying is absolutely acceptable.
Oh, okay.
So
The piece of paper says do not pry.
yeah, well they see there's the right way, and then there's the way you have to get stuff done.
And then there's the ELA teacher that reads the directions.
So I'm glad you read the instructions. So really and truthfully, you've got these pads that are pressed together. So you got 2 pistons in the back here. The hydraulic fluid pushes the piston out. The brake pad hits the rotor on the inside. And everybody's like, well, how does the outside pad get pushed against the rotor? Well, it floats on those bolts you just took loose. So the piston comes out, the pad makes contact, and then as you keep pushing, the piston still comes out, but instead of going further, it pushes the caliper away from itself. So you've got to basically pry it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this screwdriver that is not to be used as a pry tool because it even says it on there, but we're getting ready to use it as a pry tool. So I'm just going to pry a little bit. So you can see these have been extremely hot because the little dust shield is actually coming off with it. So you should be able to just do what I did there and keep prying. And like I said, we're not putting a whole lot of pressure on it. We're just prying against this bracket and pulling that thing out, and hopefully, look at you, you already got it all. Now, one thing you don't want to do is let the caliper hang by the hose. So kind of support it, flip it up on top or something like that, like you did. You did great. Let me get out of the way here because they want a screwdriver as well, and I'm going to just hand you one. Thank you. All right.
How do we get it on?
You got both bolts out?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we pry on it. You ignore the instructions that say don't pry, and you pry it because there's no other way to get it out. Yeah, and you guys are a little bit worse off because you've got all those grooves that are gripping everything. So you're going to have to basically pry it this way, kind of up and out. But it will come out. So
they didn't come with the metal clip?
What's that?
They didn't come with the new metal clip?
They did not come with new metal clips. So what we want to do is inspect them and make sure they're not damaged to the point where we can't reuse. Sometimes they call them shims. Sometimes they call them abutment clips. All they're designed to do is keep the pad floating back and forth and keep it from rattling. So we've got to knock that inner or the outer one, that piece off. Yeah, so it's actually stuck. These brakes have been way overheated for many cycles. So they would take these cars to the airport and do the defensive driving classes with the law enforcement trainees, and it was not uncommon for them to actually catch the brakes on fire. So they got them so hot.
know where this just fell out and hit the floor.
That's no problem. It's going to go up in the caliper on the back side, right down here.
Okay.
So it should sit right in that hole just like that. Now, one of the things that we've got to do before we can put new pads back in is we have to push these back in place because as our pads wear, our pistons come out. So when we go to put a new pad in that has a lot more thicker material, there's not enough room for it. So I'm going to sit that back up there. I'm going to go grab the tool.
Wrong for doing that with the big screwdriver in the beginning when we're going to
Prying it? No, that's perfectly fine. It tells you hammer would probably not be necessary. I'm going to go grab one more tool that you guys are going to need. So. Yes, it runs and drives. Yep. Hey, Attila. All right, so we've got to push the pistons back in place, and this one this one works really good for these double piston ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys use this one initially. So we're going to put this right in here like so. We're going to squeeze a couple times, and hopefully just slow pressure. These will pretty much go all the way back in and seat and only be just a 1/8 of an inch or so sticking out. So. Yep, we've done messed up. Yeah, y'all go a couple squeezes on that. I'm going to slide right by you. So as I was telling the group there, we've got to push this piston back in because as that pad that you guys took off, let's see. So they're not terrible, but you can see these are crumbly. They are really actually worse than I thought they were. Material-wise, they're not that bad thickness, but they've been so hot that they're just coming all to pieces. So we're going to put these new ones on, but if these are really, really thin, we don't have enough room for this to slide in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, and these are actually the wrong ones. See how much different that clip size is? So these are
Not the right one.
these are for an actual police car, and these calipers are not. So, and this was a highway patrol car, so at some point that caliper got changed out, and it got the wrong one put on it. So we're going to stick that back in there, and I'm going to take this little tool. And the reason I'm using that pad is so I don't mess up that piston when we're pushing it back in. And these are cheap tools. You can pick these stuff up, these up relatively.
So definitely
cheaper.
use the pad to push it back in there.
Yes. Now
You
some
don't
people
have to take the whole thing out. Don't take both sides of the pad out.
Well, I just stuck it back in there as something to push against. So if you'll just turn this, if you'll just turn this slowly, let me get it seated down in there, it will push that piston back in, and you'll just, don't really try to force it. Just turn a little bit and let it push into, because you're overcoming the fluid pressure that's in the system, or the sealed system. You're actually forcing the fluid to go back to the reservoir. Now, there was enough room in there that hopefully we don't push fluid all out in the floor, but if you start seeing a leak up here at the front, fluid comes out, and it's not a big a deal. Generally, you will remove some fluid from the master cylinder before you do this, so you have room for it to go up, but we'll figure it out.
So we won't change the pads on this one then?
Yes, we would, but these aren't going to work.
Right one.
So
we're going to put back up there what we had?
just for this exercise, yes, stick them back on.
How far do you know
It will bottom out.
it will bottom out?
Yeah, it will bottom out.
What do y'all want to turn it?
So it'll get to a point where it'll start getting tight, and then you just stop. What are the little stars for?
Huh?
What's your little stars for?
We got it from Fit. When we first started, they gave it to us at Fit, so I don't really know.
Oh.
Yeah, we had our stars match the tablecloth.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, they had us group by color.
Well, you can be who you want to be. You can change that.
Brian, I don't know if we got to put back in the right.
Let's see what we got.
Fill out again.
Okay. Let me see the clip just a second. So what it should do is actually grab right there around that rotor, or that caliper, I mean. So it may be that it's just not, it may just not be grabbing on. Yeah, that's what it is. It's just not grabbing. So we'll just we can bend it a little bit. Doesn't need to be a whole lot, just enough to get it to stay in place while you guys are. There you go. Try that. That looks good. See how they seated, and like you said, it's not all blowed all out. If you push it back in and fluid comes out, or it's all cracked up, you got to have more parts. All right. So one more thing before you actually put it back on. It mentions it in the instructions, but I know we're probably you want to make sure that these things float back and forth freely.
Okay.
Because if these don't, there's grease in here. They could have dried out or got rust or something like that in it. Those move fine, so you should be good. You can put that right back on. All right, so let's see.
Brake pad. Old brake pad.
Yep. Now that one is actually designed where you won't even need the old brake pad, but you can definitely use it to help spread that force across it. So, black piece has to be on the end.
This is being difficult for me.
It's all right. Pull your plunger out.
Pull plunger.
There you go.
Have it like you did before with the black
Yep,
spin.
there you go. So the back, you guys wouldn't have been able to complete your side anyway because they gave us their own brake pads.
Nice.
So,
Well, I would have really been dumbfounded then.
well, they physically look the same, but they have a different style clip where it goes into. So
I see it pushing. It's just looks like a lot of force.
you just know how to squeeze a little bit and then give it some time because you're forcing brake fluid all the way back up to the master cylinder. So a lot of people want to just rear force. Just squeeze a little bit and let it.
I learned all this stuff the hard way because the first time I changed my brake pads when I was 16, I took the whole mess off, brake fluid everywhere. Then I had to bleed it. I was like, we did that.
Now
Next time I'll pay some.
you may want to actually come up a little bit with your tool so you're more centered over the piston. That way it goes in straighter. And yep, I think that's a little better. And this one may not go back in very easily because it's already worn down and it's come out considerably further than it probably should have. So But it should, if you feel it going in slowly, just keep doing that.
It's going in a little bit. I didn't see it move that time.
And we may have to use one of the other tools.
Okay, there, it went something.
All right, there you go.
I have a question.
Yep, sure.
What are the brake pads actually made out of?
Brake pads are one of those things that it's kind of like a recipe. Every manufacturer has a different recipe. In this case, there's recycled metal sometimes, different types of organic compounds. Sometimes it could be. Yeah, I told him we were going to probably grab that pan right there on top of the cart, if you would, behind the fan. And I got you. That was the reason I had this, because I was expecting to see some brake fluid come out. So, oh, I overshot it. Thank you. Now, you see what's happening? We're pushing brake fluid out the front up here. So if I had used a little syringe and pulled some of it out prior to doing that, we wouldn't be making a mess on the floor. But, you know, students got to clean up when they're done anyway, so I ain't worried about it.
So where are we at now?
Okay, did you get it to seat?
I think we did.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, you able to turn a little bit more?
Well, I'm putting a little bit of extra pressure on it. I think it's seated, so yeah.
Stop. As soon as we started, that was awesome.
All right. So yours is a little bit different than the other guys. But what I wanted to show you is you want to make sure that these things float. So if these things don't float, that can cause that caliper to bind and cause it to stick and cause it to wear the pads out prematurely. So if we had got they're just called sliders most of the time, or floating pins. There's actually the rubber boots. If the rubber wasn't in here, that would be bad, because that's what's holding the grease in. So we've got grease inside of there.
Or if they're leaking.
If you got anything leaking on brakes, you need to basically figure out where it's coming from. So
you can't replace these, though, right? You had to buy a whole nother caliper.
you can buy them,
Oh, you can.
but by the time you order them, nobody's going to have just these. They're going to have a caliper that comes with these. So if you're to the point that these are bad, you probably need the caliper anyway. And anything you do to one side, you always do to the other. So everything in brakes is pairs. So
Even calipers?
and even calipers. Some people don't do that, but
Like the GM, the Cadillac Escalade, the 2007, it has a tendency of the calipers always go bad or they start sticking.
the rears.
Rears, and I think I had one of the fronts that did the same.
Oh yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah.
But I didn't change it on the other side.
Well, the problem is if you change a component out and now this one's new and the other side's old, this one might grab more than the other one. So a lot of people think, oh, I ain't worried about it on the rear. You know, if it's on the front, it can make me steer. But the rear can make you steer too. So if you get a caliper that drags on one side and it doesn't the other, you can hit the brakes and the car can dart to one side. So that's the reason I always say, always do brakes in pairs.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
What could cause rotors to wear out like
fast wear?
I don't even remember what car it was, but the rotors are always going bad.
Cheap brakes, and also
Well,
stop when you stop with your stopping the brake, right? Putting your foot on the brake.
Yeah.
Like,
threshold braking is the term that we use, which means that waiting till the very last minute to actually use them.
yep.
You know, you see the red light, but you're still on the gas. You know, okay. Yeah, and then you wait till the last minute, and then you stop really hard.
What you say? Am I that bad yet?
So holding it while you're stopped is fine, but it's the putting too much heat in it, or cheap brake pads. Cheap brake pads are usually made out of more harder material, which means they wear the rotor out instead of wearing the pad itself.
Let me ask you this question. Rotors. Is it best to turn rotors, or is it best to just go ahead and buy brand new rotors and put it?
If you have a shop that you own a brake, it's cheaper to machine them. But if you're paying somebody labor to machine the rotor, you're probably better off to buy the rotor, unless it's an obscure car that takes a weird rotor that's really expensive. The problem is that these have a minimum thickness, and you have to measure them. So you can only machine them so much before they become they're what they say the discard thickness. So most of the time, modern vehicles, this car you could probably machine these several times, but something newer, they have very little wear capability, or they don't give you a whole lot of margin, basically.
So is it true what they say, where the thinner the rotor, it heats up a lot quicker,
Yes.
and then that way it causes that vibration
Yep.
in your steering wheel, so when you're at stop.
So this is a solid rotor. You know, it's a solid piece. This doesn't have any real good way to dissipate the heat. If you looked at the front one, there's an inner and an outer, and there's an air gap in the middle. So they cool much better. But our front brakes do 80% of the stopping anyway. So the back is just basically to keep you from nose diving so much. It does help you. You know, if you don't have rear, you definitely notice it. But if you guys want to just put this stuff back on there and put it back together, I'll get the right brake pads at some point, and we'll actually fix this in my brakes class. But good questions, though. All right. Let me slide by you just a second.
Rub a little when you first get it in there.
It probably will, because this caliper still floats. All right, so you've got extra play in there, so everything's fine. And this rotor is floating too, so the rotor is held on by the wheel. So if you hold it together, it doesn't do that. If I let off and it drops, it will. So as long as you got the top and the bottom tight.
We're tight.
I see one issue. See this hose?
Yep.
This should be a nice smooth transition. So you got the caliper on, flip to 180.
So we take it off the flipper.
Yeah. Well, I guess technically it's 360 because it's got to go all the way back around.
Did not
So
notice
to just take.
where the hose was doing before I
Yep.
pulled it off. That's
So
my bad.
now
Yeah.
it's got a really tight bend in it right here on this back side that you can't see, but it might even be turned twice. And it's completely. But what happens is, as we go to turn the wheel and the suspension moves up and down, that can actually break that hose off.
Right.
And then you're left with only half of your brakes. So
My question is, this is still the top though.
yes, so like I said, you'll have to
We
flip it.
just twisted it when we were setting it up on
Yep.
top. Okay.
So
That's
just
my bad.
take those, flip it on 360 rather,
Okay.
whichever direction, and
Make sure
take
that
the
thing-
twist out of the hose.
I have a question, Brian.
Yes, sir.
You said if that hose broke, we would still have our other brakes?
Yes.
Wouldn't all the fluid run out?
Yes, on the modern vehicles since sometime in the 70s have two circuits. So there's two pistons in the master cylinder. Even though it looks like one, there's two lines that come out and are separated. So if you lose one part of your brake system, you still have the other part. Now the unfortunate part is that on this car, the front does about 80% of the braking. So you're going to lose both your fronts because they're going to be paired together. So you're only going to have about 20% of your braking on the rear. And right now, those are really bad, and we have the wrong pads. So we got the wrong ones for the back. Yeah, we got the wrong pads. So this was a police car, and I ordered pads for a police car. But I think at some point the calipers got changed to the non-police car caliper. So anyway, yeah, just flip that over for me, and we should be good on that one. Let's see what we got going on over here. Y'all been quiet, so you've either torn up something or you're done.
We're getting there. We're getting there. On both. On both, yeah.
Tearing up and being done tearing up, maybe, right? Okay, now I'm just going to point out something. You're fine, but you have a nice smooth transition on your hose. They had the caliper flip 360 degrees. So the hose is kind of balled up in a ball looking, and that's really bad if you it flex when you turn the wheel or the suspension moves up and down. Yeah, it can actually break the hose off. So
Good job, guys.
yeah,
It's nice to know I can do something right.
sometimes it's dumb luck, sometimes it's skill.
I get
Sometimes we have to have a little bit of both.
Since you weren't here to see, we doing with skill.
Skill, absolutely.
That's what I said. I weren't going to touch that fence that they were building for the goats. Because them goats get out. I don't do
Ours got out the other day.
Oh,
So
did
I
they?
didn't like it.
You don't have good?
We had 4 against my better judgment.
We had 3, now we have 5.
Yeah.
Is the brake pads and stuff, is that
every vehicle is going to have a different compound based on what the vehicle weight is and what it's designed for. So heavy duty truck will have a lot better compound for heat dissipation and strength over a say a little passenger car that doesn't really haul a lot. So
Will the design of like brake pad and stuff be different?
I'm sorry, what?
Would the design of the brake pads be different and the methods of changing them?
The changing part can vary just vehicle to vehicle. So the basic procedure is going to be the same on everything though. So if you can do it on one, you can usually do it on the other. Yeah, I think you needed to probably go twice, it looked like.
I think she did, yeah, she did.
Okay. So you're going to want to pick up and go like, let's see. It's kind of, that's better. I think we just kind of got it in a little bit of a bind. Let me see which way works best though. All right, I think you're going to be better right there like that. So pick up and go like that. All right, now this thing fell out again. Let me just grab a pair of pliers and fix that. Come here. Yes, please. I would very much like to because I got to drive it out. Unless y'all want to drive it.
After you change the brakes,
Yep.
you can't just jump in and drive when you first push the brakes.
You got to seat the pads. Absolutely. If you don't, you go for a ride that you don't want typically. All right, there we go. I bent that clip so it'll stay on a little better.
I'm kind of nervous. Is that one there, right?
Yeah, it's just the rotor is slid. Yep. Actually, it looks like we got. There we go. The front one had fallen out actually. So a trick you can do to help you assemble is take a lug nut and put it on backward and push that caliper up or that rotor up there. And that holds that rotor in place. So now you can, yes ma'am. The good thing is this car can sit right here if y'all can't get it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I want to get it.
All right, this piece has to go under here. So
Oh, that's what it was.
And you're going to want to put these little clips up in that, and then roll the bottom in. So the bottom the bottom is smooth.
There. Oh, I shouldn't have to force it though, should I? Oh, that thing is in the way.
Yeah, like I say, that little piece, and you just got to catch right in there like so.
You're still catching the rubber.
Is it? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So just push that bottom up in
There
there.
it is. That's what it was.
There you go. Now,
Yeah, we had this piece
That
was on the
clip is supposed to
outside.
be
It
in the
was supposed to go
inside.
now remember what I said when we first started about taking a picture of it before you get started?
Yeah, I said that.
Who got the picture?
Nobody.
Nobody. Okay. So don't you hate it when students just don't listen? I'm glad y'all are. I hope y'all are having a good time at least. So.
He's in his element. I'm just reliving my childhood.
Reliving your childhood.
My dad,
Yeah. So definitely make sure the bolts start by hand before you start twisting on them with the ratchet. All right. So you guys are already done, but right? Okay. Let's see. Hose looks good. You got it tight. Of course, these rotors are really, really bad. So I think everything. I think that top bolt is actually not started.
That's mine.
Actually, I don't think either of them are started. I think you got them tight, but I think they're cross-threaded. Because see how this rotor is cocked out, and I can't push it flat. So if you got them tight, I think we need to back them off and regroup on that.
You got it.
So basically what I'm looking at is this gap in between this piece and the caliper. And it's a V. So it should be nice and flush. So just back them off, and hopefully they're not cross-threaded to the point we can't fix it. But and if they are,
I don't think I tightened them up that tight.
it's fine if they are. What I was going to show the guys on the other side is I can't give you all my secrets right to start with. I got to let you struggle a little bit. So when you get the caliper back loose on both sides, take a lug nut and just run it up, and it'll hold that rotor flat against there. You're not going to be able to do it yet because the caliper's not seated where it's supposed to be. But and I put it on backward so I'm using the flat side. So all right. So you got it up there nice and tight. It's floating. The hose still just doesn't look very happy, but
we followed your directions.
you did. It didn't look like it fit either way correctly. So, but that should be fine. It should unroll. It was probably twisted to start with, to be honest with you. I mean, no, it's better now. It was really, really twisted before. It did a 360 on the. Yeah, exactly. But it should make a nice smooth turn, because, like I said, this wheel will turn in and out, and the suspension will go up and down, and it's got to be able to articulate in all directions. And if it doesn't, bad things happen. So. Yep, y'all are good. Put the tire back on. All right, now I'm going to go grab you a socket for putting the tire back on that I forgot to grab this morning. So. Yeah, keep them from just hammering them tight. I need to call the company. They'll send me an updated chart if I just call them.
You were speaking to me about that, right?
Yep.
There we go.
All right, so this is what they call a torque stick. So we can use the torque wrench, which you guys grabbed the first time, and we can actually torque it to a certain spec, but this acts like a spring. So as you go to tighten it, it will start to twist. You'll feel it kind of jump in your hand, and it won't over tighten your lug nuts. So works really, really well. Make sure it actually fits. It does. So start them all by hand, and make sure the taper is in, which you've already done, because that's what centers up in that little cone. Now these are hub-centric wheels, which means that the wheel actually fits on the hub, and that's where it centers. So we're not relying on the lug nut to actually center the wheel. If you have aftermarket wheels, a lot of times the hole here is larger, and they use the lug nuts to help center. So if you've got aftermarket wheels and they just don't feel real smooth, that's a lot of times why. It's because it's using the lug nuts, and it's not, the wheel isn't designed to have the lug nuts center it and hold it.
Does it really matter if you do that cross tightening thing?
Yes, it does. So you tighten in a star pattern. If you don't tighten in a star pattern, what you can do is you can have this thing cocked like that, and you can actually warp the wheel, or in some cases, because this rotor is held on by the lug nuts, you can actually warp the rotor. So you can actually create a pulsation in your brakes just by changing the tires. So my truck is very susceptible to that white GMC sitting outside the door. I don't let students tighten my wheels. Mainly because they're students, but because it's real bad about warping rotors. If they, I let them work on I let some of them work on my stuff, not all of them. Some of them I don't want them to borrow my pen, but anyway.
You use your pneumatic to tighten it.
Yep, you can tighten it.
Hand tight.
You just kind of run them up and then do a star pattern, and you'll kind of feel and hear the impact gun change tone. It won't let you over tighten it. It will literally start to flex. You've had a hard day, hadn't you? Keeping up with me. I apologize. How do we do? Did we get it back?
You want to look at it first? You want to look at it?
Sure. I think it's straight. Did you check the bottom one?
Yeah, the
That
bottom
looks
one's
straight
good,
too.
yeah.
Let me see your ratchet. One of the things I will say is that you probably have way more ratchet than you have bolts.
Right.
So smaller tool for the job is probably better in this case because it allows you to. Yeah, yeah. But plus you can over torque it with such a big ratchet. Yeah. That's going in smoothly. I think you guys are fine. Just keep tightening.
Okay.
Good job. You fixed it. I'll tell you like I tell my students, you're here to learn, and this is how you learn. You know, I rarely have anybody learn from their success. Everybody learns from their mistake. So, because you're like, ooh, I'm going to make sure I don't do that again next time. So.
I want to be no expert.
Still doing the star.
Yep, do the star. All right. Go ahead. Okay. Did you feel it kind of jump in your hand?
Yeah.
Stop.
That means done?
Mm-hmm. Go to the next one. Okay. There you go. You can do it more than once, you know, just to kind of make sure.
You said that's gonna make sure that you don't over tighten anyway.
Yeah,
Yep.
it definitely stops it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now I have dealerships or technicians from different places that tell me, "Oh, I hate these things. These don't work. These whatever." All three of the big manufacturers recommend these: GM, Ford, Chrysler, and these are. I've got some that I've had for 20 years. You know, and they still work. I've never had a wheel come off because of that, because I didn't
Does
tighten it.
that do anything if you have a regular socket or lug one?
You could use it that way because it's still going to flex, but it's really designed more for the hammering effect from an impact gun. This is for speed. That's what this is. This is because time is money to a technician in a dealership or any kind of repair shop. The quicker I can get it done. Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I've got to stop. I've got to go look up my spec. I've got to grab my torque wrench. I've got to set the car slightly down on the ground after I run them up. I've got to torque them by hand, you know. And if you want to check, this thing is rated at 135 Newton meters or 100 foot-pounds. We could actually take the socket and the impact gun or the torque wrench and just kind of see.
Did that.
Yeah. Now, we may be slightly over, but we won't be under. And that's the key. Way too far over is bad because a lot of people think torque, the tighter we tighten it, the better it holds. And that's not really the case. Torque is a function of the fastener. So basically we are pre-stretching that bolt to the point where it's got enough spring pressure that the nut doesn't back off and that it's not too tight that we pull it in half. So everybody says, oh, what kind of torque does that need? Or what should I torque that? Should I torque this? Everything's got a torque spec, but it's not necessary on every single thing. As long as you understand the mechanics of tightening, that's just helpful, is all it is. So, all right, hold up just a second. I'm going to switch you out. You're going to actually use a torque stick. You're good. You all just got ahead of me. It's all good.
It's okay. So we're going to take this off and still use this.
Yep. So this is a torsional spring. So basically what it's going to do is this is rated at 100 foot-pounds. It's going to allow us to tighten our lug nuts, and we're going to do a star pattern
Okay.
so we don't over-tighten.
Okay. So here, I already did that one.
Yep.
So
Just do it
here.
again just to make sure because you didn't hammer it up tight, I don't think. All right, so you feel the gun kind of shake in your hand? That means that you're done.
So then this way.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
what it should-
Yep.
Okay. Then we're going here.
All right, that one. Even though we probably got it up already, we're going to hit it again. Okay, that one. Okay, so that is designed to basically start to flex at 100 foot-pounds. So I was explaining just a second ago, I don't know if you heard me or not, but my students always ask, well, how do I torque this? Do I torque that or whatever? And I explain to them torque is a function of the fastener itself. Torque is what we're trying to do is pre-stretch the bolt. In this case, it's a stud. We're trying to pre-stretch that stud so that it has some elasticity left. And that's what keeps our nut from backing loose and keeps us from over-tightening it to where it will break off. So, and I say torque is a function of the fastener, and they look at me like I have no idea what you're talking about. So everything has a torque spec. We could go look it up, and it, this probably says 100 foot-pounds or so. I actually have a chart, and that's what we use that for. So I'm gonna let the group in the back use this one. So, all right. So you guys are ready to tighten yours. I'm gonna unhook this because it leaks.